counted 4 names on the manifest and 5 drawers running cold. I want you to sit with that number for a second, because I did, standing alone in that room at 2 in the morning, doing the math over and over like it might change if I checked enough times. It didn't. And by sunrise, I had a handprint on the inside of a drawer that I have no memory of ever opening. I'm going to walk you through this exactly the way it happened, in order, because the order matters. If I told you the ending first, you wouldn't believe the middle. So bear with me. I was low enlisted medical support, the kind of soldier who gets handed the jobs nobody senior wants. That's how I ended up with solo overnight guard duty at our base's small mortuary affairs unit, the unit that handles remains during transfer, processing, and repatriation. It's not glamorous work. It's paperwork in refrigeration units and being the last set of eyes on a manifest before someone signs off on it in the morning. That particular month, we'd had an unusually high volume of transfers coming through, more than I'd ever seen in that unit, and command wanted eyes on the room at all hours until the backlog cleared. My instructions were about as simple as instructions get. Log anything that comes in or out. Don't touch anything. Don't fall asleep. I remember thinking, walking in that first night, that it was almost peaceful in a strange way. The low hum of refrigeration units, the smell of antiseptic and cold steel, fluorescent light buzzing just slightly overhead in that specific frequency that gets into your teeth after enough hours. Sterile, quiet, nothing about it felt wrong yet. The manifest that night listed 4 occupied units, 4 names, 4 case numbers, 4 drawers I was responsible for logging. Simple enough. I did my walkthrough, checked the seals, checked the temperature readouts, and settled in at the desk with my coffee going cold in a paper cup, same as every other overnight shift I'd ever pulled. Except protocol requires an actual head count, not just a paperwork check, physically confirming the number of active cold units running, because paperwork lags behind reality more often than anyone likes to admit. So I did my count, and I counted 5. I want you to understand how certain I was that I'd made a mistake. I recounted 5. I checked the panel readouts along the wall, unit by unit, matching each one against the manifest in my hand. For were accounted for 4 case numbers, 4 names. The 5th had no label at all, no case number, no name, just a blank steel drawer humming along, with the others like it belonged there. I put my hand against it, mostly out of confusion more than anything else, the kind of instinctive thing you do when your brain can't reconcile what it's looking at. Every other drawer in that room was cold to the touch, refrigeration doing exactly what refrigeration does. That 5th one was warm, not room temperature. Warm, the way skin is warm, coming through solid steel in a way that made me pull my hand back before I'd even decided to. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Equipment malfunction. A miscount on my part after a long week of double shifts. I logged the discrepancy exactly the way I was trained to, made a note to flag it for the morning crew, and told myself I'd let someone with more rank and more sleep sort it out. Around midnight, I checked the overnight temperature logs out of nervous habit, the kind of thing you do to fill silence when you don't want to sit with your own thoughts. 4 of the 5 units held steady, exactly where they should be. The 5th one was fluctuating, rising, falling, rising again, in a pattern that looked less like a malfunctioning compressor and more like something inside it was still generating its own heat. I sat with that thought longer than I want to admit. Somewhere around 1 in the morning, I heard tapping, soft, rhythmic, coming from that direction. I told myself pipes do that, old buildings do that, refrigeration units cycle and click and settle exactly like every other mechanical thing does at night. But out of some morbid curiosity I couldn't talk myself out of, I checked my own pulse against my wrist. It matched, beat for beat. The tapping from that drawer was moving in perfect time with my own heartbeat. like something on the other side of that steel had synced itself to me. Specifically, I called it in. I want that on the record. I did everything by the book. Maintenance told me there was nothing they could do until morning. I asked more than once if there was any record of a fifth unit ever being installed in that room. They told me flatly there were only 4 bays in that facility. 4. Full stop. I stood there with my hand on a fifth one, humming, warm, very clearly present, being told by the only people who could confirm it, that it didn't exist. I don't know how to explain what that does to you. Being told, calmly, professionally, that the thing you can see and touch and hear isn't real. I've thought about it a lot since. I think that might have been the scariest part of the entire night, and nothing had even happened yet. Around 2:30, the lights started going out. Not all at once, one at a time in sequence, down the row of overhead fixtures, each one flickering and dying a few seconds. After the last, methodical, almost deliberate, like something was moving down the length of that room, switching them off by hand. The sequence ended exactly at that fifth drawer, and for one impossible second, standing in near total darkness, I could still see it, faintly outlined, lit by something I couldn't identify, no bulb anywhere near it, no source I could point to. Then even that went dark, and I heard the latch release. A single, metallic clunk, unmistakable, the sound of a heavy steel mechanism disengaging on its own in a pitch-black room. I didn't open it. I need you to understand that clearly, because it matters for what comes later. I backed into the corner of that room, drew my sidearm, and I stayed there for the rest of that hour, listening. Slow, wet breathing, close, not mine, filling the silence between the hum of the working refrigeration units. I have never in my life been more still than I was in that corner, waiting for a sunrise that felt like it was never going to come. It came anyway. Lights back on their normal cycle, my relief walking in right on schedule. Everything in that room exactly as it should be, for labeled drawers, sealed and cold, and the fifth one closed and locked, no different than any other morning. I filed my report. I described everything, knowing full well how it would sound. Command sent MPs to look into it, mostly as procedure, mostly because an overnight guard reporting a full psychological event needed to be documented one way or another. They dusted that fifth drawer for prints, more out of thoroughness than any real expectation of finding something. They found a handprint on the inside of the drawer, matched, eventually, to me. I have no memory of opening that drawer. I have no memory of closing it either. There is a gap in that night I cannot account for, no matter how many times I've replayed it since, and the only physical evidence of what happened in that gap is my own hand pressed against steel from a side I never remember reaching. I was never assigned to that unit again. Nobody explained why, and I never asked, because some part of me understood I didn't actually want the answer. I still think about that hour, more than I'd like to. I still think about the breathing and the tapping matched to my own pulse, and the warmth coming through cold steel that shouldn't have been warm at all. I don't remember opening that drawer. I don't remember closing it either. I just remember that for 1 hour, I wasn't the only thing breathing in that room, and I don't know which one of us stopped first. I have 30 seconds to convince you this is worth 10 minutes of your night. So here it is. I spent 4 months guarding a decommissioned missile silo in the middle of nowhere, and on my last shift, the base phone rang. That phone had been disconnected for 6 years. I answered it anyway, and the voice on the other end was mine. I still don't know how to explain what happened after that, but I'm going to tell you everything, in order, exactly the way it happened, and you can decide for yourself whether I'm the kind of guy who cracks under pressure, or whether some places just aren't finished with the people who leave them. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that in the fall of my second enlistment, I got assigned to a unit nobody wanted. Security forces, night rotation, out at a Minuteman site. that had been pulled from active service before I was even born. The missile was long gone. What was left was concrete, steel, and storage, old equipment nobody had bothered to inventory, sitting in a silo complex out past the last working streetlight in 3 counties. I want you to picture it the way I saw it that first week. A gravel road that turns to mud when it rains. A guard shack with a space heater that only worked if you kicked it twice. Fluorescent lights that hummed just slightly out of tune with each other. So if you sat there long enough, your ears started making up a rhythm that wasn't really there. Cornfields on every side, dead and gray, folding into a horizon with nothing on it. That was the job. Watch nothing, all night, for nothing. Honestly, for the first 2 weeks, it was the easiest duty I'd ever pulled. I'd bring a thermos, listen to the radio hiss, do my walk every hour, and count the minutes until sunrise turned the fields gold instead of black. I even started to like it. There's a kind of peace in being the only person awake for miles. That peace ended on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were paperwork days, and I was going through the old access logs out of pure boredom, the kind of boredom that makes you read things nobody's supposed to care about anymore. And I noticed something. There were entries, recent ones, names signed in for the lower level, level 2, the level we'd been told was permanently sealed, dated, timed, except none of those names matched anyone on our current roster. None of them matched anyone who'd ever been stationed there, according to the personnel files I had clearance to see. I brought it up to Dobbs, the guy who trained me. He was older, quieter than most guys on that rotation, the kind of quiet that comes from knowing something and choosing not to carry it around out loud. He looked at the logbook for a long time. Then he closed it and said, "Don't go down to level 2 alone." That's it. That's all he gave me. When I asked him why, he just shook his head and said some things are better left as rules you follow instead of stories you understand. I laughed it off, told him I wasn't planning on it. But you know how it is, the second someone tells you not to think about something, it's the only thing you think about. 2 nights later, I was doing my normal perimeter sweep, flashlight cutting across frost on the gravel when I heard it. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, coming from the blast door. I want you to understand what that door is. It's rated to survive a nuclear detonation at close range. It hasn't been opened in over a decade. There is nothing on the other side of it but a sealed stairwell leading down into a level we were told to stay out of. And something from the inside knocked on it 3 times, waited for me to stop walking, and then went silent. I stood there in that cold with my flashlight shaking in my hand, and for the first time since I'd taken that post, I understood why Dobbs looked the way he looked when he talked about it. I told myself it was settling. Old metal contracts in the cold, right? That's what I told the report. That's what I told myself walking back to the shack with my heart going so hard I could feel it in my teeth. For the next few weeks, it got worse in small, quiet ways. The motion sensors on the lower level started tripping at exactly 3:14 in the morning. Every single night. Like clockwork. And every time, the camera feed would reset itself before I could see anything. Just static. 4 seconds, and then nothing. Like something had reached out and turned the dial itself. I started smelling ozone and wet metal drifting up the stairwell on nights when the air down there should have been bone dry. 2 other guys on rotation put in transfer requests without giving a reason. One of them wouldn't even look at me when he packed his gear. I should have requested a transfer too. I want to be honest with you about that. I had every opportunity to walk away and I didn't, because some stubborn part of me needed to understand what I was dealing with before I let it win. So one night, I went back to those old logs. Not the current binder, the archive, boxes of logbooks going back decades, stored in a supply closet nobody had opened in years. I found the one that matched the dates of those strange, unmatched names. And near the back, there was a page torn out. Clean tear, right at the spine. But when I held the next page up to the light, I could see the impression of handwriting bleeding through from whatever had been written on the missing page, pressed hard enough to leave a ghost of itself behind. I want you to sit with what I felt reading it, because I need you to feel it too. That handwriting was mine. My handwriting, describing a shift I had never worked. Dated 3 weeks in the future. I didn't sleep that day. I kept turning it over, telling myself it was a coincidence, that handwriting isn't as unique as people think, that stress does strange things to memory and perception. I made myself go back for my next shift because if I didn't, I was afraid of what not knowing would do to me. That next shift turned out to be my last one on that post. My rotation was ending. I was being reassigned in the morning. I remember feeling almost relieved, like I'd made it to the finish line of something without fully understanding what I'd been running from. Around 2 in the morning, sitting alone in that shack with the space heater ticking and the fluorescent lights doing their off-key hum, the base phone rang. That phone had been disconnected since before I even got there. Dobbs told me that on my first week, half joking, said it was just for show, a prop from when the base was active. It had never rung, not once, until that night. I picked it up anyway. I don't know why. Some part of me needed to know. There was silence first, then breathing, slow and even, like someone standing very close to a receiver, waiting to see if I'd hang up. And then a voice. My voice. Not similar to mine. Mine, the exact cadence, the exact tired rasp I get at the end of a long shift. It said 4 words. Don't go down there. I didn't. I want that on the record. I sat perfectly still, phone against my ear, until the line went dead on its own. And then, 30 seconds later, the blast door alarm went off for the first time in the entire history of that post. I checked the camera. The feed was live this time. No static, no reset. It showed the stairwell down to level 2, lit by the dim emergency lighting that was never supposed to be on. And standing there, halfway up the stairs, was a figure in an old-style uniform, the kind phased out before I was even born. It wasn't moving. It was facing the camera. Facing me. I sat there until my relief showed up at dawn. I didn't say a word about it in my final report. I signed my paperwork, I packed my gear, and I left that gravel road behind me for what I thought was the last time. 3 months later, I got a message from a guy I used to serve with, someone who'd stayed on that rotation after I left. He didn't call. He texted late at night, and all it said was that they'd found something in the current logbook that he thought I should see. A photo followed. It was an entry in that same unmistakable handwriting, describing a shift, a knock at the blast door, a phone call. The date on that entry was that night. The night he sent it to me. I never wrote it. I want to be as clear about that as I possibly can. I have never gone back to that post since the day I left it, and I have no explanation for how my handwriting ended up in a logbook describing events happening in real time, 3 months and 400 miles away from where I was standing. I think about that stairwell more often than I'd like to admit. I think about the fact that some places don't let you leave clean, that they keep a version of you behind to finish out the rotation you thought you were walking away from. So if you ever find yourself posted somewhere quiet, somewhere old, somewhere with a door that's supposedly been sealed for years, do yourself a favor. Don't read the log books too closely, and if a phone rings that shouldn't even be connected, let it ring. Because I answered mine, and I still don't know which one of us actually left that post. I was 17 days into basic training when I found a warm blanket folded inside a closet that had been empty for 30 years. I need you to sit with that for a second, because it gets worse, much worse. And by the end of this, I still won't be able to tell you what I saw standing in that hallway, only what it did. I'm going to tell you the whole thing, start to finish, exactly the way it happened. You can call it exhaustion. You can call it stress, sleep deprivation, whatever makes you comfortable. I've told myself all of those things too. None of them explain the blanket. For those who've never pulled it, Fireguard duty is about as unglamorous as military life gets. You're a recruit assigned to walk the barracks halls for an hour at a time, all night. Checking for fire hazards, waking the next guy for his shift, writing the time in a logbook. Bolted to the wall. It exists because barracks used to burn down more often than anyone likes to admit, back before smoke detectors were standard issue. Mostly it's boring. Mostly, it's just you, a flashlight, and 40 guys snoring behind closed doors. Our barracks was old. Not renovated old, not charming old, genuinely old, wood frame. Scheduled for demolition the following spring once the new dormitory finished. Construction. The kind of building where every hallway smells like floor wax and gun oil. And something underneath that you can't quite name. It creaked constantly, and on my first night of Fireguard, my drill sergeant told me exactly what you'd expect. Old buildings. Settle. Ignore the noise. Do your walk. Log your time. Don't fall asleep. I want to be honest with you. I wasn't scared that first night. I was tired in the specific way only basic training makes you tired, the kind where your body aches in places you didn't know had muscles. I did my walk on autopilot. Down the hall, check the exits, note the time, back to my bunk area, repeat. There was one thing, though. At the end of the second floor hallway, past the last row of bunks, there was a supply closet with a hand-painted sign nailed to it. Do not enter. Structural. Nobody explained what that meant. Nobody seemed to care. It was just one of those things you accept without asking, the way you accept a lot of things in your first few weeks of military life. The second time I walked past it that night, the door was open. Not cracked, open. Maybe 8 inches, dark inside. I remember being annoyed more than anything. I closed it, made sure the little metal latch caught, and kept walking. 20 minutes later, on my next pass, it was open again. Same 8 inches. And this time, there were footprints leading out of it down the hallway. Wet, bare, unmistakably human. Fading out about 10 feet down the corridor like whoever made them had simply stopped. Existing partway through their next step. I stood there a long time with my flashlight on those prints, doing that thing your mind does where it offers you 5 reasonable explanations in a row and none of them actually makes sense. A leaking pipe, someone's wet boots, a prank from another recruit who thought this was funny. I wrote none of it in the log. I didn't want it on record that I'd lost my nerve over water stains. I want to tell you the rest of that night went quietly, but it didn't. Around 1 in the morning, I opened the logbook to write my check-in time, and there was already an entry for the next hour. My handwriting wasn't on it. It was someone else's, cramped and old-fashioned, describing a hallway inspection I hadn't done yet, timestamped 40 minutes in the future. I remember laughing, a short, nervous laugh, the kind that comes out before your brain catches up to how unfunny something actually is. I told myself another recruit had messed with the book as a joke. I told myself a lot of things that night. Around 2, standing at the base of the stairwell, I heard breathing behind me. Slow even. Close. The kind of close where you should be able to feel someone's presence on your neck. I turned. Nothing. Empty stairwell. Dim emergency lighting. The low hum of the building settling into itself. I kept walking faster than my normal pace after that, and I didn't look back again, because some part of me understood that if I turned around fast enough, I might see something I wasn't ready to see. The next day, exhausted and half convinced I'd imagined the whole night, I mentioned the closet to one of the older instructors, a guy near retirement who'd been at that post longer than almost anyone. He got quiet in a way I recognized, the same quiet I'd later learn meant someone was deciding how much truth you could handle. Off the record, he told me a recruit had died in a fire in that exact building, decades earlier, before it had even been renamed. Fireguard duty, he said, existed because of what happened to that kid. Nobody talked about it directly. It just became policy, become tradition, became a chore nobody questioned the origin of. I didn't sleep well after that conversation. I kept telling myself it explained everything. Old building, tragic history, my own exhausted brain filling in ghost stories to match a scary fact I just learned. That explanation held for exactly one more night of duty. My next Fireguard shift, close to 3 in the morning, I was standing near that same closet when I heard my name, whispered, soft, coming from inside the closed door in a tone that wasn't threatening at all. If anything, it sounded almost comforting, like someone trying to reassure a scared kid that everything was going to be fine. I want you to understand that I am not a brave person. I froze completely, flashlight beam shaking against the wall, every instinct telling me to walk away and finish my rotation somewhere else in the building. But something about that voice, gentle, familiar in a way I couldn't place, pulled me toward the door instead of away from it. I opened it. There was no structural damage inside, nothing that explained the sign nailed to the door. Just a single wool blanket, old military issue, folded with the kind of precision they drill into you in week 1. I reached out and touched it before I could stop myself. It was warm, not room temperature warm, warm like something had just been resting under it. And underneath that warmth, unmistakably, the smell of smoke. Not old smoke, not the ghost of. A smell soaked into old wood. Fresh smoke, sharp and close, with nothing burning anywhere in that building to explain it. I backed away from that closet so fast I nearly fell. And that's when every door in that hallway, I counted later, 12 of them, clicked locked, one after another, in perfect sequence, starting from the far end of the hall and moving steadily toward me, like something was walking the length of that corridor, testing each handle as it passed, getting closer with every click. I don't fully remember getting back to the stairwell. I remember standing at the bottom of it, breathing hard, waiting for my relief to show up so I could hand off the flashlight and pretend the rest of my night was normal. I never wrote any of it in the log. I never told my drill sergeant. I finished basic training 2 months later and transferred out, and for a long time I told myself that was the end of it. One strange, sleep-deprived night that I'd eventually stopped thinking about. They tore that barracks down almost 2 years after I left. I found out because a friend who'd stayed in the area sent me a local news clipping about the demolition, almost as a joke, remembering I'd trained there. Buried near the bottom of the article was one detail that made me set my phone down and not pick it back up for a while. The construction crew had stopped the demolition partway through, after uncovering a small closet space on the second floor that didn't appear anywhere on the building's original blueprints. I still don't know what that means. I don't know whether it means something was built later and forgotten, or whether it means something else entirely, something I'm not sure I want an answer to. What I do know is that on quiet nights, when a building settles the way old wood does, I still catch myself listening for breathing that isn't there, and some small, stubborn part of me still expects to hear my name.